Hello dear friends. In this video we are gonna talk about burnt or combust planets in the chart and also a more rare specific case which is called Kazimi position. First of all, the technical side. When do we have a burnt planet? A burnt or combust planet is the one which is less than 3 degrees away from the sun, which means that the planet is in conjunction, but it's a very tight, very close conjunction, no more than 3 degrees. Each planet which is less than 3 degrees away from your sun is burned by the sun or is a combust planet. And there are different principles in different types of astrology. For example, in horary astrology, the orbis is different, but for personal charts, for natal chart interpretation, we use 3-degree orbis. And the Kazimi position is the one which is actually the closest possible conjunction. The planet should be no more than 17 minutes away from your sun. 1 degree, I'm just reminding you that 1 degree consists of 60 minutes. And the Kazimi planet is the one which is no more than 17 minutes away from your sun. So it's like less than 1/3 of the degree. Very, very tight conjunction. Overall, when we have a burnt planet, it's considered to be a very specific case. As you can understand, this is something quite rare. We don't see this in every chart, but when we see it, it's especially important. The burnt planet is actually giving its qualities to the sun. We have blending energy. And depending on the planet which is burned by the sun, the qualities which are transferred will be different. In cases when we have Kazimi, or also called in the heart of the sun, we have so much more intensified communication between the two planets, the sun and the other planet. And this is usually related to some kind of gifts. People with some kind of talents, the planet can bring them, the planet in conjunction with the sun, can bring them especially accentuated qualities. This is extremely rare to have a Kazimi position. The burnt position is also quite rare, but Kazimi, that's something exceptional. And depending on the planet, which is Kazimi, we talk about different qualities. Let's go through each of the possibilities and let me explain to you the possible characteristics or what might happen when we have this combination. And if you are not sure whether you have a burnt or Kazimi planet in your chart, you can use my free birth chart calculator. The link is in the description below. You just have to look at your chart. Is there a planet which is visually close to the sun? If that's the case, check the degrees and just make a very simple calculation. If the orbis or the range, the distance between the planets is less than 3 degrees, it means that you have a burnt planet. What would be the case if, for example, the moon is burnt by the sun? This is one specific case because the sun and the moon are actually defining the lunar cycle. And in this case, it would be very important which planet is the first one. Is the moon behind the sun or is the moon in front of the sun? Because those would be two different lunar phases. If the moon is behind, this is the last phase of the lunar cycle. This is an old moon, and we may find someone who is very close, someone who lives in their own world, someone who is really diving deep into things. If the moon is in front of the sun, then this is the first phase. We still have a new moon, so especially at first, at younger age, we may still have someone who is closed or more introverted, but with time we will feel more the influence of the first lunar phase, which means someone focused on taking action, someone going for some results, someone who needs this validation from the outer world. Whether they realize it or not, it's another question, but they need to interact with the outer world. And the qualities of the moon are actually part of the personality. And it can happen in each of the signs, it doesn't matter, but it would mean that when the moon is burned, it's a little bit, it's a very rough description, but a little bit like having your sun in Cancer, the sign of the moon. So the moon qualities are part of who you are. We may have sensitivity, emotionality, depending on the level of personal growth. We may either have a very immature, childish person, or we may have someone who is very caring, willing to help others, someone who is a caregiver. If we have Mercury, which is combust or burnt by the sun, this is actually the most common case because Mercury is always close to the sun. And when Mercury is burned, those are people who live a lot in their minds. They can be quite subjective. They think that their opinion is the one which is the most accurate. They can't see things so much from, an outer perspective, but the mind can be so active. Usually, I have found that those people may struggle also with relaxing their mind. The mind may literally be restless, constant thinking. Sometimes it doesn't allow the person to fall asleep, or they're constantly, repeating the same thoughts in their minds. But the fact is that the mind has an incredible potential and has the opportunity to find solutions, or to be very rational, or to, to connect with people as well. Depending on the sign, of course, we may find out whether the inner qualities, which are more about the intellectual process, or the outer qualities, which are more about connection and communication, which of those will be stronger. But overall, the burnt Mercury brings incredible strength to the mind, and overall, this is someone who is thinking a lot. If we have Venus burnt by the sun, those are people who can be quite emotional, who may value beauty, art, aesthetical things, or good relationships, good communication with people. They also take everything really personal. That's a very typical characteristic of the burnt Venus. Someone who thinks that everything that happens around them has to do something with themselves, and they can get offended quite easily. They can be more sensitive, so we really need to be careful with those people. But overall, Venus qualities are very accentuated. They are very strong. If Mars is burned, this would mean that the qualities of Mars are part of who we are. And you can imagine this as someone who is willing to take action, who is ready to go for it, someone who is capable of taking risks, and overall needs dynamic, needs competition, needs to be the first. Of course, we always need to pay attention to the sign, because it would be a huge difference if we have this conjunction in Aries or Capricorn, or if we have it, let's say, in Cancer. Those would be very different, but the qualities of Mars are still part of who we are. And this could be also someone, for example, who is more impatient, who is always in a rush, who always wants to compete or needs to do something. And as we can understand, this can be used in a positive, constructive way, or also in a challenging and destructive way. It really depends on the whole chart and also how we use the energy. If we have Jupiter burned by the sun, these are people who are usually highly ambitious. They want to succeed, they want to grow, they want to expand. They might consider themselves as authorities, as the person who knows best, as the person whose opinion is really important. Overall, it increases the sense of self-importance and how significant we are. And depending on the sign, we may have different possibilities. For example, if this is, let's say, in Leo or in Sagittarius. Both of the planets are quite strong in this sign, and sometimes we may have a more selfish person or someone who like overestimates sometimes their potential, their skills. If this is used in a positive way, this may just be someone who is really knowledgeable, who is a great expert, who can teach others. But the important thing is that Jupiter's qualities are part of who we are. We have someone who's willing to grow, who needs to expand, who needs to learn new things, and all the other wonderful qualities of Jupiter are part of their core essence. If we have Saturn burned by the Sun, honestly, this is not an easy case. Saturn with the Sun is not a harmonious combination, especially for the Sun. And we may feel this as some kind of restriction, something that is pushing us down, or something which doesn't allow us to express who we truly are. Very often, actually, the one who creates the situation is the person himself. He doesn't give himself enough freedom. He is constantly taking care of responsibilities, of duties, of something that they have to do. That's how they feel. I just have to do this. Overall, this can be people who are extremely responsible, very organized, but sometimes they may also struggle with opening up, with having a more positive attitude, with having more enthusiasm. They are more living in some kind of closed space, so to speak. So this is not a simple position. And next we have the outer planets. The outer planets are also very interesting, but not simple. And they may work so differently depending on how we actually use this energy. If we have Uranus burned by the Sun, those could be people who can be extraordinary. In some cases, they may even be genius, but I'm not saying that this would be everyone. In some rare cases, those could be genius people, really. Or if they're not genius, they're just extraordinary or really different than other people. They have their own approach, they have their own philosophy, or they're just very creative in everything they do. Usually those are people who have interest in untraditional things, astrology first and foremost, but not only, all of the other esoteric knowledges as well. Also, those could be engineers, people who understand technical stuff. Nowadays, those are the IT specialists as well. So the qualities of Uranus are part of the Sun, but keep in mind that this can make the Sun a little restless, constantly chasing something as a vision, as an ideal in the future. So it's not easy to relax and to really find this in our material world. If we have Neptune burned by the Sun, those are also quite complicated situations. The positive side, someone who can be extremely creative, extremely sensitive, with a very deep understanding about other people, willing to help, people who are great psychologists or doctors or other type of helpers. Also great artists, painters, musicians, actors. And that's the positive side. But we know that with Neptune, things are never simple, and we always have something in the back which is happening kind of, mostly in the subconscious mind, but also affecting our reality as well. And the challenging side of the burnt Neptune is that we can live in our own world, completely out of space, completely in our own bubble of imagination and fantasies and, frankly, illusions. Unfortunately, also, there could be addictions, there could be a desire to escape reality, to live in our beautiful imaginary world. This Neptune position is definitely not simple, so it's bringing incredible potential, but it's definitely not easy to process this and to work with this on a material level, unless we are grounded and we are committed. And finally, we have Pluto, which is also not a simple case. Pluto is the last outer planet, and it's an extremely powerful, strong planet. It can make people capable of influencing others, great political figures, great social figures, psychologists, psychotherapists, doctors, especially like surgeons or others who are working, oncologists, for example, they're also related to Pluto. So those can be extremely powerful people who either have a strong social impact or other type of way to influence others. For example, healers, people who heal with energy, Reiki or other modalities, they're also related to Pluto. Pluto can bring incredible source of energy, but it can also make people go through some incredible transformations, crisis. Those are people who can handle crisis. They can actually get empowered during a crisis, but we know that crises, they're not no jokes. So obviously the person will go through some kind of challenges during their life, but there is a very high opportunity for the person to actually grow and to become more empowered. So that's briefly what we can expect when one of those planets is burned. When the planet is Kazimi, the qualities are even more accentuated. It's very rare. It can be an exceptional gift, but also we have to remember when the planet is burned by the sun, we may also experience some kind of challenges which are related to this particular area. And we have to pay attention which are the houses which are ruled by the burned planet. In those houses, things may also be more specific, more dynamic, and we need to make a more in-depth analysis. That's briefly what does it mean if you have a burned or combust planet in your chart. Let me know if you actually have this case, or maybe you have seen some examples. It's always interesting to read your comments. And if you want to learn astrology with us, check the links below for Mars Stars Astrology Academy. You can sign up for the waitlist. We will let you know when doors open, and you can really learn astrology on a high advanced level. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.